undefeated with a spotless 9-0 professional record, 7-0 as an amateur, and an eye-popping 88% finishing rate.
Oh, it's in, so deep.
And it's tight. That's in, it's tight, and that's it. A first round finish.
Tell me, yeah, exactly. Tommy, tell me you saw this first fight on the Contender Series. It is fucking crazy how nasty this fight was.
Tommy McMillen is being hailed as the next big thing in the UFC's featherweight division, with the potential to carry the torch once Alexander Volkanovski steps away. Armed with heavy wrestling, crafty submissions, and a decent striking toolbox laced with nuclear KO power, the 27-year-old prospect from Montana is a nightmare matchup for anyone in the division, even for the top 5 elites. Training alongside fellow Montanans like Sean O'Malley and Tim Welch, he continues to sharpen his already well-rounded game. And the scary part is, he hasn't even hit his prime yet. After a grueling war on Dana White's Contender Series and a statement victory that earned him his UFC contract, the timing is perfect to dive into Tommy McMillen's violent journey to the big league and let you decide if he truly has what it takes to rule the featherweight throne in the future. Tommy McMillen was born on December 15, 1997 in Great Falls, Montana, and spent most of his childhood on the wrestling mats, claiming he'd been wrestling since the age of 3 in the Montana mountains. In high school, he captured a state championship every year except his injury-plagued junior season. But his rise wasn't smooth. As a freshman, McMillen started on JV since the varsity squad was stacked. Refusing to be overlooked, he challenged for a varsity spot, won it, and set his sights on a state title. Against the odds, he entered the tournament as an underdog and walked away as champion. Wrestling became his foundation, and by the end of his senior year, McMillen already knew his path, the uncharted waters of MMA. When Tommy swapped the wrestling mat for the MMA cage, the violence didn't skip a beat. His transition was not that of a rookie stepping timidly into new waters, but of a man charging headfirst into combat, dragging his wrestling pedigree into the fire of mixed martial arts. He made his amateur debut on June 24, 2016 against Anthony Ruiz, and his arrival seemed less a debut, more like a hostile takeover. From the very beginning, there was no hesitation. The crowd expected a typical wrestler's blueprint: feints, clinches, double legs. Instead, the Montana native threw caution and leather into the wind, launching ballistic missiles from the moment go. It wasn't a soft introduction. It was an announcement that this wasn't just a wrestler dabbling in striking. This was a fighter intent on rewriting his narrative. That unexpected approach shocked the audience and discouraged Ruiz from keeping the fight standing, so he panicked and dived for the legs. But desperation rarely beats preparation. The takedown was sloppy, rushed, and met with seasoned hips that knew how to sprawl. Ruiz tried to drag the fight where he thought he'd have the advantage, but instead the wrestler showed off how it's done. Once McMillen got into gear, it was like watching an avalanche roll downhill. His wrestling pace melted Ruiz faster than a candle under a blowtorch, smothering every attempt to breathe. The positional control, the transitions, the suffocating pressure, it was an exhibition in dominance. Ruiz flailed for daylight, but there was none. Eventually, the choke sank in tight, cutting off hope along with oxygen. Forced to tap to an airtight rear naked choke, Ruiz became the first page in what would be a long and brutal ledger. The following year, McMillen stepped into another proving ground, this time fighting for the local Fight Force lightweight title against the undefeated Brandon Brisboe. The fight began as a measured chess match, a technical exchange with both men probing for weaknesses. But like all great battles, order eventually gave way to chaos. It descended into beautiful mayhem. Instead of rolling dice in a shootout, McMillen reverted to his most reliable weapon, raw wrestling. With brute force and perfect timing, he muscled the adversary down to the mat. And once Brisboe's back hit the canvas, the story was already half written. For those unfamiliar with Tommy's ground game, it wasn't just about takedowns, it was about control. His pressure was like quicksand. Once caught, there was no getting out. Brisboe squirmed, kicked, and survived. But survival is not victory. The first round ended with the enemy still breathing, but only barely, and stepping into the second round was no salvation. It was a prolonging of the inevitable. Early in the second, Brisboe was sent crashing down. Desperation drove him to attempt submissions from the bottom, hoping for a miracle reversal. But every attempt was stuffed, every gambit smothered. Tommy secured dominant position, hammering punishment from above like a blacksmith forging steel. Out of sheer fatigue and futility, Brisboe left his neck exposed, a fatal mistake in the presence of a finisher. McMillen took it without hesitation, executing like a man who had rehearsed this ending 1,000 times. The Fight Force belt was his. Some would mock its cartoonish design, calling it a Power Ranger belt, but for Tommy, it was sacred. It was his first tangible piece of MMA gold, the overture to a symphony of achievements yet to come. What made Tommy different was that he wasn't satisfied with only one dimension of the fight game. Interestingly, the wrestler began to develop a taste for striking, for the violence of fists and kicks. To test himself, he signed up for a pure kickboxing bout against Andy Manley. They wasted no time easing in, no jabs, no patience. They skipped appetizers and went straight for the main course. Tommy's uppercut was the first statement, precise and brutal, landing like a heat-seeking missile. With the aggression of a man trying to break down a brick wall with bare fists, Tommy swung relentlessly. He fired a high kick, then crashed a right hand against Manley's chin that sent him wobbling across the canvas. The man's legs betrayed him, buckling under the assault, and suddenly he was a target on stilts. Tommy smelled blood. Using the momentum, he pressed forward like a predator chasing wounded prey. The referee gave Andy a count, and though he staggered back to his feet, his fate was already sealed. The second assault came harsher, faster, more merciless. Tommy unleashed combinations that turned the ring into a stage for execution. By the time Manley crumbled, sinking like the Titanic split in two, it was less a fight and more a demonstration. By this point, McMillen was becoming a storm no amateur could weather. In just 2 years, he bulldozed through 6 opponents, each a stepping stone on his march toward legitimacy. His final amateur test would come against Daniel Campagna, a skilled grappler who thought he could match wrestling with wrestling. From the opening scramble, it was clear Campagna had bitten off more than he could chew. He tried to test the waters on the ground, but Tommy rose above, literally and figuratively, smothering him from the top. Every attempt Campagna made to breathe turned into another reminder of who the alpha wrestler was inside that cage. Even when Campagna escaped momentarily, there was no reprieve. Tommy snatched another takedown with violent authority. Round after round, the pattern repeated. Campagna fought bravely but was dragged back into the undertow again and again. By the third round, exhaustion set in, and with it, resignation. Tommy transitioned to full mount, a position of both dominance and doom. From there, the finish was inevitable. With surgical precision, he wrapped an arm triangle choke around his opponent's neck, cutting off his air and hope simultaneously. Campagna had no choice but to surrender, another victim etched into McMillen's growing resume. By October of 2018, 7 men had already fallen, each tasting the bitterness of defeat at the hands of a Montana wrestler turned MMA predator. The amateur chapter was closed, but the story of Tommy McMillen was only beginning, one that would be written not in ink, but in blood. On November 9, 2019, Tommy McMillen launched his professional career in emphatic fashion, locking in a textbook rear naked choke against Benjamin Hollier. After a 3-year hiatus from MMA, he returned in 2023 and needed just 55 seconds to secure a first-round TKO over Elijah Jamerson. Over the following 2 years, the sturdy tyrant strung together 7 straight stoppage victories, a streak loud enough to catch the attention of Dana White himself. But before being tested inside Dana's organization, McMillen had to clear one final hurdle, a clash with Dumar Roa, a hardened veteran boasting 40 professional bouts on his resume. Tommy fired the opening salvo with a thundering high kick, then followed with a flying strike that electrified the crowd. From there, he dug into his arsenal of knees before grounding the veteran with a takedown. Once on the mat, McMillen took the bull by the horns, put the hooks in, and cut off the oxygen supply. The MMA gods approved, and soon after, a contract bearing his name arrived, his ticket to Dana White's Contender Series. On September 2, 2025, the Montana native stood across from David McMillen, an undefeated Russian juggernaut with a spotless 7-0 record. David wasn't just unbeaten, he had finished 6 of his 7 foes, and when the cage door shut, even the shadows seemed uneasy. What followed was a slugfest, each strike cracking through the arena like a gunshot in a canyon. Neither man had patience for patty cake. This was raw, unfiltered violence. Both entered as warriors. Only one would leave as a legend. In the final minute of this savage dance, it was clear both had watched too many Rocky films. The Russian weathered the storm, but his battered face was unrecognizable from his passport photo. When the grueling 3-round war ended, the judges handed victory to McMillen. Dana White, both stunned and satisfied by the spectacle, wasted no time. He welcomed the Montana prospect into the UFC, and all signs suggest his arrival will be nothing short of a hostile takeover. Tommy McMillen wrestles like a bear, boxes with the precision of a sniper, and crushes his opponent's spirits with suffocating pressure that never relents. He isn't satisfied with simply dominating. He hunts for the finish every time, whether by slick submission or a torturous ground-and-pound barrage that forces the referee's hand. So far, no opponent has been able to crack the riddle of Tommy McMillen. But now, inside the UFC, he finally steps into a world where the hunters are just as dangerous as the hunted. The real question is, how far can he go in the big leagues? Does he have the weapons, the will, and the wisdom to one day dethrone the featherweight king, Alexander Volkanovski? Only time will provide the answer, but one thing is certain. We can expect a trail of electrifying performances, highlight reel finishes, and violent masterpieces as McMillen begins his march toward greatness. If you enjoyed the video, front kick that like button, subscribe to the channel, and join the Dialed In MMA Club today.